because we have this geographical spread and because the weather doesn't influence each other over long distances, we have, it depends on how you count, but between 5 and 7 points which are not correlated with each other.
So you use geographies to hedge between the positions.
You are a hedge fund.
Yeah.
A physical or financial spot power hedge fund.
I would actually go so far and say that we today spent.
So this is Lars Weber from Yggdrasil.
Do you use that kind of information in your models, or is it just nice to have the diversification, but do you still trade mostly just purely isolated spot?
This is a really, really interesting question. So we are doing, I think that this is where we are very different to, let's say, the bigger entities in this company, in this market. We are trading every market for itself. We are looking almost. What we're doing is we're 98% or more of our volumes and our profitability comes from trading in the next 48 hours. So we only look at what is today happening, what is tomorrow happening. And that is local weather. So we have global coverage. And if you look 48 hours ahead, weather cannot move more than 3,000 kilometers-ish in 48 hours. So the weather for tomorrow in New York and the power prices therefore for tomorrow in New York do not impact the weather and the power prices in London or in California or in Texas.
For the next 48 hours.
For the next 48 hours. You're fully correct with your TTF, JKM, Henry Hub correlations. If we would trade futures for coming month, then of course everything is again connected because you can move the gas, you can move the shit. But for the next 48 hours, it's islands. And that gives us very, very big risk diversification. 94% of our trading days are profitable. But that doesn't mean that every one of our strategies is profitable in 94 days. Because we have this geographical spread and because the weather doesn't influence each other over long distances, we have, it depends on how you count, but between 5 and 7 points which are not correlated with each other. Now, if every single one of them is only profitable in, let's say, 60% of the time, it's like rolling dice. If you roll a dice and you make, you have a 1, 2, 3, or 4, you make money. But if there's 5 or 6, you lose. If you have one dice, you would lose 1/3 of all days.
So you use geographies to hedge between the positions.
You are a hedge fund. A power, physical or financial spot power hedge fund.
I would actually go so far and say that we today spent maybe more time in sizing our strategies correctly according to a geography to maintain a high average hit rate than actually finding more strategies. Of course, that's also a very big focus, but how do you make sure to not lose?
And that I feel like, okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe that allows you to test the waters in the new markets because you know that, I don't know, just an example, in US, we expect our profitability to be this. We're just entering, now I'm seeing Japan, let's say take back 2.5 years ago. Should we try to see what happens, take larger volumes? And because I know that, our expectation for the US will be good. And then you can do this until you feel like, okay, I have an edge now in Japan as well. And then you kind of replicate this strategy.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that you mentioned here. The first thing is a wind turbine doesn't know where it stands. A wind turbine just knows what the amount of wind is. And a solar panel just reacts to solar radiation.
They don't know either. It's just physics.
Exactly, it's just physics. They don't. Oh man, Paul. So disclaimer: we both studied physics.
Yeah,
but that means that they just react to weather. The assets react to weather, and therefore the impact on the market, barring special regulations, stuff like that, should be similar, relatively similar. So yeah, of course, if you are in the US and then you move to European markets or to Japanese markets, the first batch of strategies that you have is just copy-paste. Because again, it's whether doing something to renewable assets.
Yeah.
After a while, and then you get also local market insight, that will be adjusted. But the starting point is copy-paste.
So you have these three, you have world coverage, you have your three hubs, Japan, Europe, US. You said the weather cannot travel from one hub to the other within these 48 hours-ish, but it can from country to country.
Of course.
So when we start zooming in, when you trade Holland, Denmark, Belgium, France, Germany, maybe UK, Ireland, are your strategies still as isolated per country, or do you have more of a cross effect that you would not apply the same strategy everywhere because you scale up on volume? Let's say your indicator is 5% band of wind, very high wind, and it happens to be everywhere because your low pressure area is not covering all of them. If you would size up on all of them and you're wrong, you could get massively hurt because you have big volume in every market, same strategy everywhere. How do you make sure that doesn't happen?
So if you would have asked me 7 years ago, I would have said, don't know. And when we started in the US markets, it is also relatively not a problem because the ISOs don't have a lot of capacity between them. So you're saying, okay, what I do within these ISO, it doesn't affect what I do within the other ISO-ish. But indeed, within Europe, that's not the case. You have euphemia, you have all different kinds of market coupling. You're absolutely right. So what you can start to do is looking at, okay, if I have a strategy which works here and I have a second strategy which works there, you can basically do a backtest and see how are these correlated. So if I have one strategy in Holland and let's say one strategy in France, then you can say, okay, how much do these strategies make when only one is active or the other is active? And how much do they make if both are active? So do I then want to create a kind of artificial ceiling over those two strategies and saying, if both of them are active, and I can see historically that they're performing worse if they're both there because they eat into each other's profit, then I might want to bring it down a little bit. Yes.
So you do cross-strategy correlation backtests.
Yes, we even go further. We call that, we have certain buckets. And then what you do is you look within the bucket how they affect each other.
How many buckets do you have? How many strategies? I mean, you must have solar strategies, wind strategies, mean reversion, arbitrage.
I think that at some point the answer was always hundreds, but I guess by now it's thousands, if not many thousands. But
thousands of strategies.
Thousands of strategies. But then it depends on what do you call a strategy. Like you can have a strategy for every market in case of icing. Now, how often does that happen? That happens maybe 5 times a year, and it doesn't happen 5 times in every market. So there is a strategy, and that strategy is always running, but it doesn't mean it's active all the time.
And just to take 1 minute, you call it icing.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of them with the fundamental meteorological data. No, tell us what is icing.
Icing would mean that if there is a lot of if there's a lot of water in the air and it is cold, then that water can freeze on the blade of a wind turbine. And if there's ice on the blade of a wind turbine, that wind turbine is not allowed to spin, because if it would spin with ice on it, those ice particles could become projectiles.
Right.
So they shouldn't run.
And do you then make the difference on, let's say, offshore or onshore, where they may be treated with?
Exactly. So you can go. How far do you want to go in detail? And you can.
That's how you get 1,000 strategies, right?
Yes, exactly. So you can either say I'm just keeping to very global strategies. I have one strategy or 3 strategies for the UK. One looks at, is it sunny? Is it windy? Is it cold? And that's it. Then of course over the whole globe you have a couple of dozen strategies maybe.
Right.
But and then all of those strategies would run, let's say, in 80 or 90% of the time, or give a trigger if they should or shouldn't run, or go up or down. Or you can start to become finer and finer and finer, and then it becomes hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of strategies. The downside of doing that, so if you do backtesting, those 10,000s of strategies would probably give you more money because they are, quote unquote, always right. But you have less instances and when they are used. So, and you also start to get a bias with, overfitting your model and those kind of things. So you have to be a little bit careful in becoming too specific.